I'm Trevor Alonso. With the Snyder Cut of Justice League coming out this weekend, I thought I would look back at the theatrical cut that was released in 2017, also known as Justice League. The plot is, after the death of Superman, a new threat is coming to Earth, in the form of Steppenwolf and his army of parademons. He's coming for 3 mother boxes, which wield power. Batman forms a team of heroes to protect the Earth. Okay, I'm gonna say this first. I'm a huge fan of comic books. I'm a big fan of DC, so I was looking forward to this when it came out. I wasn't disappointed with it, but it's not the best comic book movie. When I first saw this, I could really tell this was made by 2 completely different directors, with 2 completely different visions, which really makes for a movie that feels incoherent. Now, we all knew from the beginning that Zack Snyder filmed a lot of stuff that was different, either different takes or different scenes, just because the first trailer looks really different than what came out. Also, a lot of the stuff in the trailers did not even make it into the movie, which is really odd. Now, we all understand that occasionally there's 1 or 2 scenes that don't make it into the movie, but this was a lot. So pretty much right away, there was a lot of rumors that there was a whole other director's cut. Even to the point that fans kind of expected a director's cut on the Blu-ray. Instead, we got a Blu-ray that said, with scenes not seen in theaters. Which, those scenes had to be shot by Joss Whedon or something. The best way to describe this movie is like a mediocre episode of the Justice League cartoon. Which isn't something that you want for your big theatrical movie. Don't get me wrong, I love the Justice League cartoon. It's just that for a movie, you expect something to step up. There is a lot of problems with this movie. The biggest one is 2 directors, 2 different visions, and it's not like they're directors that are kind of close to style. They are 2 widely different directors. One of the other problems is, you have a studio that's wanting to compete with Marvel, instead of realizing that, hey, DC and Marvel are 2 completely different companies. It's okay to be different. Zack Snyder from the beginning was pretty much fighting with Warner Brothers over when to do a Justice League movie. Originally, they wanted to do a Justice League movie right after Man of Steel. He had several meetings with them convincing them that they have to build up to the Justice League. And in a lot of ways, the Justice League movie is still too soon. Because yeah, we got explanations for Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, but we didn't get anything for Flash or Cyborg. At the time of taping this, I haven't seen a Snyder Cut yet. I do plan to as soon as it comes out, so maybe in that cut they make up for it. But for what we got, there wasn't any explanation other than what's in this movie. This leads into another problem with this movie. Instead of showing us these great stories or origins, they're only telling us. It's like Cliff Notes. And I feel like you can get away with that with Batman and Superman. If they were to do another movie with just Batman and Superman and start all over, because everybody knows those origins. But not everybody knows the origins of Cyborg and Flash. Yes, the fans do. But this movie is made for everybody. Being the first big budget movie with the Flash and Cyborg, you expect to see an origin. Not just a fast clip show of, oh, that must be where he became the Cyborg, and then you're just told the rest. There's a lot of other parts in this movie where they just tell us stuff instead of showing us. Or they partially show us, and then explain a lot more. I feel this is Joss Whedon doing this. This goes back to the first Avengers movie. At one point in time, every Avenger kind of talks about or says their own origin. Which is fine in that movie, because we already saw everybody's origin. We're already introduced to every character. So we're just building up, and they're kind of telling each other a little bit more, which, in a way, sort of reminds us, but not like pushes us into something already established. So maybe Joss Whedon was thinking of that for this movie. That works fine for the Avengers, but doesn't work fine here when your characters have not been introduced already. Another thing that's a problem with this movie, it feels like at times it's being rushed. We now know that Warner Brothers said it has to be at 2 hours. If you look at the back of the DVD or Blu-ray, or even look at the runtime on IMDb, it says 2 hours exactly. That's credits and all. So maybe Joss Whedon was trying to do Cliff Note movie scenes just to get through this. We now know that the majority of the movie was reshot in a really short period of time because Joss Whedon only came on sometime in the summer before the movie came out, at least as far as we know, which Joss Whedon had to have shot a lot in a short period of time because he took over about May or June, and the movie came out in November. And on top of that, you have a lot of special effects, you have music to score, so the reshoots were done really fast and a lot. We also know that it was majority of the movie, so this was kind of done in a crazy fast time. We also know that Joss Whedon wasn't exactly that great on set. We now know that Gal Gadot didn't want to film the scene where the Flash lands on top of her, which is the exact same scene from Avengers 2, and that Joss Whedon locked her into a room and filmed the scene with a double, which after hearing that story, I'm really surprised Gal Gadot didn't kick his ass. And also, out of all the actors on set, why would you mess with the one that was in the IDF? She was the only one that was actually trained to kill terrorists. Seeing this in theaters, and even watching it the other day, I've always noticed the effects are all over the place. There are scenes where the CGI looks amazing, and then there's a lot of places where it looks horrible. This has to be because of the time restraint to make this movie. If everything that's been reshot was done in the summertime, again, they're trying to get this out by November, they have less time to work on this. And of course, the two biggest problems are Superman and Steppenwolf. Now, at the time of doing reshoots, Henry Cavill was under contract and couldn't shave. All because it was a power play between Warner Brothers and Paramount. That's a short story. Paramount could have just let him do it, but nope, it had to be a power play. So they had to do a CGI shave, which looks amazing whenever he's not moving his face or his mouth. Okay, I noticed in some scenes that Superman looks great and the background looks like crap. I feel like that's the effects people going, okay, we're under a time restraint. One of them is gonna look bad. Do you want it to be Superman or the background? We can't work on both, man. Steppenwolf looks bad throughout the entire movie. He really does look like a video game cutscene. And not a good one. There are times that it looks like, okay, they just made him the same gray all over instead of giving him shading and all that other stuff. And seeing the original design, which we all saw in Batman vs. Superman, he looks completely different. And that one must have been more complicated, so they probably came up with a version that was like, okay, we can get this done in this time. Another thing I noticed watching this the other day was the ADR. There's a lot of added ADR. Now, I don't mean like recorded voice just so we can hear certain voices. There are scenes where a character is off screen and you can hear their voice giving some kind of important line, or in a lot of cases in this movie, a joke. Which we all know now that Warner Brothers wanted this to be more jokey like Marvel. And I noticed that there's a lot of jokes that don't really fit or seem a little out of place in this movie. Another thing that seemed really off in this movie was the sexualization of Wonder Woman and the Amazons. There seems to be a lot of butt shots in this movie. I sort of noticed it the first time I saw this movie in theaters, because I started thinking to myself, why is the camera that low of an angle pointing up from behind Wonder Woman? One shot that really looks weird in the movie is when it's like behind Wonder Woman looking at a plane as Bruce Wayne and Barry Allen come off a plane. Like, okay, you could have made that shoulder height or from a distance or something. I will say all the superheroes are pretty great. They're just rushed. At different points they have their moments and it's rushed. The best scene in the movie is the scene where they're fighting Superman. That seems like that shouldn't be the best scene. You know, the best scene in a movie should be either when you're fighting a villain or telling a great part of the story. Not when you're trying to fight a superhero who came back. Granted, he's sort of a villain at that point, but it feels like the whole movie should have been on that level or higher. And even in the movie, you can tell a lot of those shots are reshot, because Henry Cavill's mouth looks really off. Especially when he's talking to Batman face to face, and the face is just right in there. Okay, spoilers for a 4-year-old movie. The Justice League does save the day. Superman joins the team at the very end, and it seems like he's there at the very tail end of the big fight. I feel like the original plan, he was probably in there longer, but it seems like at the very last minute, Superman shows up. And it's great for a little bit, but it's like, again, rushed. I feel like he should have been a bigger part of this movie. Yes, I know they had to bring him back, but again, it should have played out a little bit better, a little bit smoother, or a little bit longer. Him coming back should have been played out a little bit longer too. It's pretty much, he comes back, talks to Lois, and she goes, well, Bruce Wayne says you need to save the world. Go. In the comic books, yeah, he jumps into the action, but it's more dramatic and it's more drawn out. There's questions of, is he fully charged? Can he actually fight? Is this really Clark Kent / Superman? Again, that's a big problem with this whole movie, is it's rushed. Superman's story rushed. Wonder Woman's story rushed, but doesn't feel like it's that much of a story other than what we already know. Batman's story, it does play out, but it feels like rushed too. Aquaman's story, rushed. Cyborg's story, really rushed. Flash's story, rushed. No pun intended on that. I also have to say, which at the very end of this movie, you see Steppenwolf being taken away by a parademons. So you get the idea that he lives and gets tortured, possibly to go back to Darkseid. And I know that was the further plans for like a second and third movie that would involve Darkseid. And that's one thing that really bugged fans, and me included, was they only mentioned Darkseid. Steppenwolf in the comic books works really close with Darkseid. So it's a little weird in this movie. He only mentions Darkseid in passing. Again, another character, Steppenwolf. His story is really rushed. We don't know a whole lot about him. He's not fully interesting. They always say for an action movie, your heroes are only as good as your villains. Which I feel like Marvel does that a lot, where they make their villains not that interesting. The end credits scene where we get to see that Lex Luthor is building the Injustice League, it feels like a whole different direction they were going. And from behind the scenes stories we heard now, doing an Injustice League movie wasn't the original plan. Okay, I'm gonna give this movie a 6 out of 10 comic books. Like I said, I don't love it, but I also don't hate it. It's not the worst, but it's also not the best comic book movie. It feels very different in tone than the rest of the DCEU movies, especially for the movies that were built up to this. Okay, so I hope you look forward to my Snyder Cut review coming up soon. Thank you for watching my video.